Okay, we can start now. So, hello everyone. Welcome to a totally brand new chapter, a brand new episode. As we aren't the Game Studies India anymore, we are proud to announce that we are Digra's very own Indian chapter, and this is the first event under the Digra India banner. And today we have with us Saumya, who is going to talk about designing diegetic elements in tangible and bodily interactive narratives. So, a brief word about Saumya. She is a designer, maker, and researcher in human computer interaction, pursuing her PhD in informatics department at University of California, Irvine. She studies how interactions with technology can emit in physical objects and the environment around us, rather than just being limited to screen-based interfaces. She has interned at Facebook and H3 as a user experience researcher. In her free time, she likes making art, swimming, and making or reading anything that tells a good story. With that, I would ask Saumya to start presenting.
Uh,
Thank you.
well, before Soumya starts her story, I would like to again say that Soumya is now Dr. Soumya Gupta. She's just defended her PhD successfully. So, well, congratulations on that, and
Thank
over to
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's really nice to meet you all. And thank you so much for organizing this and attending this presentation. It might be a little different from the other things because it doesn't exactly fit into digital games. But I hope you enjoy it and gain something out of it anyway. So let's see. Let me start sharing my screen. Think we are on screen 2. Okay, all right. Okay, so you all can still see it, right?
Yes, we can.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so I know we already talked about me a little bit, but I'll go through my intro as well. So just completed my PhD in informatics from University of California, Irvine, with my focus is on human-computer interaction. And what I do here in my work is I design, create, and study tangible interactive narrative experiences. And we'll come to what that is in a second. But basically, I design these experiences and then ask people to experience them, observe them, and then interview them, and then make the thing that I just made better. And the things that I work with are tangible interfaces, wearables, and virtual reality. And some of my publication venues are TEI, which is Tangible Embodied Interaction, DIS, and Kai. So just to give you a little bit of what's going to happen in this talk, I'll introduce you to this area, tangible interactive narratives, and what diegesis is about, and then I'll go through two of my works, Shiva's Rangoli and Gummy's Way Out, and they describe how I've used these terms, the diegetic elements. And so this is around like a 20-25 minute presentation, and then we can open up to questions. And also, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to interrupt me and stop. All right, so my work is about storytelling. Stories detail histories, cultures, worldviews. They transport us into magical lands, serve as tools for entertainment, creative stimulation, and to articulate our thoughts and opinions. Stories can move us and evolve us, and they are important. So technology has furthered the art of interactive storytelling. And what do I mean by interactive here? Here, readers are not just passive consumers of stories, but are participants, either exploring or impacting the story world through their actions, and readers have a stake in how the story unfolds. So, this interactivity can mean branching pathways like we see in many digital narrative games like Mass Effect. and nowadays even in interactive TV. And interactivity could also mean exploring nonlinear stories, enacting a character's role, or deciding how rather than what action is performed. So, as we know, digital mediums like desktops and mobile phones have been widely used to deliver interactive narratives, but they often create a boundary between the reader and the story, and they many times reduce the reader's actions to clicking or pressing keys. Also, whenever I use the word reader, I'm referring to the user or the person interacting with the story. So, in response of all these digital mediums, the TEI field, which is the tangible embodied interaction field, encourages the use of tangible objects and bodily actions to interact with the story, because that can produce performative, multisensory, and lived experiences, allowing readers to really enact, feel, and live out events in their beloved fictional worlds. So, tangible interfaces use physical objects to interact with technology, and they can break the boundary between the reader and the story world. So, to understand tangible and bodily interactions further, let's walk through an example. So, Genie Bottles is an interactive narrative system, and the interface comprises of three beautifully crafted glass bottles. So, what readers do is they open the flask bottle and they hear a genie come out to tell their story. And if two bottles are opened together, two genies come out and start talking to each other. So, in this way, readers can explore different arcs of the story by opening different bottles. And here, rather than using a digital medium like a desktop or mobile phone to interact with the story, readers are using bottles. And these bottles are tangible objects which are rooted inside the narrative, and that's how they can bring readers closer to the story world. So, one concept that has been used to bring tangible objects and bodily interactions into narratives is diegesis. So, diegetic elements refer to things that exist in the story world as well as the reader's real world. And let's talk about a few works that use diegesis. So, coming back to genie bottles, these bottles were diegetic because they were homes to the genies in the story world, but they also existed in the reader's reality. So, another example is the reading glove. Here, readers explore a non linear story of a spy by interacting with different objects that the protagonist once interacted with. So, Breathtaking Journey is a VR experience where readers take the role of a refugee escaping the back of a truck. And during a patrol inspection, they are told to hold their breaths. And if they do so, they escape, else they are caught. So, here the breath is a diegetic element and can really help readers even feel the tension in the story. And then in Harley's work, readers see a squirrel in VR, but they can also touch it in reality, making the squirrel diegetic. They can stroke the squirrel and feel its heartbeat calm down in response. And in another example, readers can interact with a diegetic cube where touching different sides of a cube releases a melody that saves the fictional forest environment. So, these few examples illustrate the power of diegesis to bridge the reader's reality and the story world, connect readers to characters, and engage the reader's body, even creating sensory and maybe even emotional experiences. So, this concept of diegesis is the focus of my work. So let's move on and talk about the storytelling systems that use diegetic that I created that use diegetic tangible and bodily interactions. Um, so the first piece of work is Shiva's Rangoli, and I did this way back in 2016 and 17. So Shiva's Rangoli is a tangible interactive narrative that allows readers to impact the affective or emotional tone of the characters in the story by sculpting the ambience. That means the light, sound, music, and background video of their space through a diegetic interface. And here you can see images of the space enclosed by a tent and the interface. So here I explored how readers can take a character's role and interact with the emotional tone of the story. So let me talk a little bit more about the interface and then I'll get into what the experience is about. So the interface is inspired by Rangoli making and the narratives have been inspired by Indian mythology. The installation is a space enclosed by a tent, and inside the tent lies a table, 12 artistically patterned Rangoli rings, and 2 centerpieces. So, any 3 of these rings and a centerpiece are placed on a tabletop in a concentric manner to create a Rangoli. And the Rangoli helps set the ambience of the space, the light, sound, music, and video. And different colors map to different emotions and ambient effects. Red is angry, yellow is happy, green is calm, and blue is sad. So the ambiences have river-based effects to match the theme of the story. So the yellow happy rings create a warm, upbeat, and chirpy ambience. The green calm rings create a soft and soothing one. The blue sad rings create a low and dull environment. And the red angry rings create a stormy, thundering ambience. And people can mix and match different colored rings together. And what this ambience does is that it also changes the emotional tone of the story. So how does it do that? In the stories, Shiva is the protagonist, and he is a powerful god who creates rangolis to express his emotions. And the weather of the story world transforms to reflect those emotions as well. So readers take Shiva's role and create rangolis on his behalf to express his emotional state. So, for example, green colored rangolis set a calming ambience and reflect that Shiva is feeling calm, but the red rangolis set up raging thunderstorms, signifying that Shiva is angry. And the emotional tone of the story also shifts to match. What happens when Shiva is calm versus when he's angry. And in this way, the Rangoli and the ambient effects are diegetic because they are a part of the reader's world and they are also a part of the story world and they help readers take Shiva's role. So after every chapter, readers can reassemble pieces of the Rangoli to change the mood. And here's a quick little small snippet of the experience where I sort of create a blue, somber environment. And I really hope you guys can hear this. So that's setting the lights, music, sound.
From up above, Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma observed with deep concern. Vishnu said, I was unable to maintain her purity. I will fix Janvi. Shiva was feeling upset that day, and his annoyance was echoed by the dingy and sad lands. He frowned at Vishnu and patronized him.
So that was like a small snippet of one of the chapters, which shows that Shiva is upset and then something's happening in the story. So once this was created, what did we do? I conducted study sessions with 25 people where I observed how they interacted with the system, and then we had detailed interviews. So let's talk about a few key takeaways. What I really wanted to tell you all, want to tell you all through this is the power of diegetic interfaces, what they can help us do. So, first of all, readers felt like they took Shiva's role because they could create rangolis on his behalf and express his emotions, and then really see the impact of his emotions play out in the story as well. So, for example, one of the participants said, at one point, I felt like I'm Shiva, he makes rangolis, and I'm sitting here making rangolis. I thought, can he make a yellow one? So I made a yellow rangoli and he did it, and he said it was beautiful, and in that moment, I felt embodied. And readers also felt a sense of responsibility towards the characters as they could impact Shiva's mood. And they were committed to making ambiences that fit well with the needs of the characters rather than creating rangolis based on their personal preferences. So another participant said, I felt like I was the almighty Shiva. I was determining life and death. I had the responsibility not only to destroy, but also overlook Vishnu and Brahma's jobs. I felt very powerful and I had this huge responsibility. So the ambient effects obviously help readers feel as if they were inside the story world, a part of the story world. But besides that, they also use the ambiences to personalize their experience by claiming to represent maybe incremental and gradual changes to the mood and emotions, and at times even representing a complex mix of emotions. So again, here P2 says, I could influence how angry someone was. I did not want to put all red up there. I did not want to see what would happen. I thought the system might show me if I did. And participants also mentioned using the ambience to enhance or diminish certain feelings in the story events. So, like P17 here says, if you feared the way things were going, you could offset some of that by making things a little more pleasant. Regardless of what was going on, if the person wanted to calm the story down or if they wanted it to be more forceful and aggressive, they could use the Rangolis for that. So, this shows how they were able to really personalize their own experience of the story. So, a quick summary of what we just discussed. Diegetic interfaces can help people take the character's role, especially when they can feel, impact, or express the emotions of the character, like they did here with Shiva. And diegetic ambient effects can do more than just mimicking the story world's sensory information, and here they could really help people personalize the affective tone of the story. So the next system that I wanted to discuss was Gummy's Way Out, and this one's pretty recent, and I'm not going to. So I'll cover only a few details here because this is still unpublished work, and we're working on the publication. But it's an interesting piece, so I wanted to share it with you all. So, Gummy's Way Out is an interactive narrative with food and the diegetic body, where a reader eats a gummy bear who's called Gummy, and then they help him find his way out of their body by eating various food items. So the reader impacts their narrative body in ways that either help or hinder Gummy's journey. And here's the spread of food items that I used for this experience. And this is a seated experience, so that means readers hear Gummy talking through audio as they consume the food. And again, this is just a very quick snippet to show you all the setup. So the way it starts is the reader eats a gummy bear, and then they hear Gummy screaming, shouting to stop because they are hurting them. So here I eat a gummy bear.
Ah! Stop! You're hurting me! Ouch!
So in this way, the person can eat different things and see how the story pans out based on what they eat. So let's do a very quick walkthrough of the experience. So as we all saw, the story starts when the reader eats a gummy bear, and as they chew, they hear Gummy cry out for help, begging the reader to stop. But Gummy is soon swallowed, and then he asks the reader to help him find his way out. So in the stomach, he asks for healthy food so he can cross the acidic river. And as with almost every scene, unhealthy food makes the situation worse, and healthy food helps the body and Gummy. So, for example, on consuming oily food like fries, Gummy complains on slipping on all the oil the reader just ate. The stomach acid rises and it starts burning Gummy as well as the reader's stomach walls. But however, healthy food gives Gummy a boat and helps him cross the acidic river. After this stressful crossing, Gummy urges the reader to consume their calming drink and enjoy a slow moment with him. And in this way, the story goes on. Gummy travels through various organs like the spleen, blood, heart, bowels. He comes across different obstacles, and you can either help him or hinder him based on what you consume. And eventually, Gummy finds his way out of the body. So again, I ran a study with 19 people where they experienced the system, and then we had detailed interviews. So in the initial design, I used a makey and also a belt that you can see here on my waist, which has vibration motors, and they would vibrate based on how Gummy was moving up or down in the body. And but what happened was, due to the pandemic, we all went virtual, and I had to convert this into a completely virtual Wizard of Oz style study. So we got rid of the belt, and we were just using food for this experience. So what I did was I asked participants to assemble a list of food items in their kitchen within these broad categories, like healthy, unhealthy food, something they find energizing, something that they find calming, water, and some gummy bears. And so these are a few plates that people assembled and used for this experience. So let's talk about a few findings and takeaways from this study. And again, this is just a very thin slice. So let's start with what helped people feel that their bodies were diegetic, that is, that their bodies were a part of the story world. So people felt that their body was a part of the story world when there was a significant impact on their bodies in the narrative. So, for example, a few people felt really grossed out by the oily food when Gummy slipped on oil. And one of them said that she felt a tightness when the stomach acid was rising. So, like P17 says, I felt a tightness in my stomach. It's because my body was a part of the story. I could feel the acidity, the heartbeat, it all brought realism. Um, People also felt their bodies more whenever Gummy did something strange inside. So, for example, people were apprehensive when Gummy was coming close to their heart in the story. So here P3 says, when the gummy bear was near or inside my heart, I could feel the heartbeat from the microphones. It was making me anxious, like, what is this gummy doing inside my heart? So let's talk a little bit about what were the consequences of positioning the body in a diegetic role. So participants discuss how their body helped them buy into the story more because it gave them a sense of realism. So P1 says, there was something very real about eating the gummy bear and then hearing it talk to you. I had these moments of these brief twitches where I imagined an actual sentient creature running around inside my body, yelling at me. People also said that their personal stakes in the story were more, increasing the gravity of the choices that they made. So one of them said, usually in a game, when you take an action, it doesn't really impact you in reality in any way. But here, when you ingest something, it's really being ingested. It's not just Gummy being affected, but it's me too. The fries, the carrots, they all exist in my body. So in screwing over Gummy, I'm screwing over myself. And I think this really speaks to the power of diegetic interfaces because now something of you is a part of the story world, and that increases the stakes. A few people also reported feeling the emotional states of the story themselves. So, for example, they felt calm both when they had a calming drink, uh, and especially because people could personalize and bring in what they actually found calming. So P16 says, there's this first moment I drink the calming drink, and she said, I feel relaxed. I felt relaxed too. Maybe that's the most comforting moment during the entire experience. And the most successful design element that helped readers feel really responsible for Gummy was chewing him in the beginning. They felt really guilty of eating something that was alive, which made them feel obligated to help him throughout the experience, especially since he was stuck in their own body. So here one of them says, I was emotionally invested in her. She was really sympathetic early on, and so I was reluctant to defy her. When the gummy bear revealed themselves to have consciousness and the ability to talk to me, I felt really guilty about the fact that I was hurting them by chewing them. But there were a few things that hindered people from buying into the story, especially when there were any anatomical inconsistencies, like food impacting the body and gummy at a very fast speed. And few also questioned like how he could still be alive after being chewed. So this break, I call this a break in in the diegesis, and this made people feel distracted and less connected to Gummy. So a few design takeaways from these findings were that we saw how the diegetic body can help readers feel actions viscerally, give them a sense of responsibility, produce emotional responses, and also add personal stakes. Uh, imagine if this was presented digitally, we probably would not have had such reactions. But however, designing for the diegetic body can be tricky because the body is an interface that is really close to the real world, and people expected Gummy to follow the rules of their body. So it's important to keep in mind the fragility of suspension of disbelief, especially if the story is grounded so much in the reader's reality. And lastly, integrating sensory, affective, and functional properties of the food in the narrative can create visceral experiences like Gummy slipping on oil made people feel really gross, and the calm drink helped people feel calm themselves. And in this way, what I was doing was I was integrating the sensory and emotional properties of food into the story. So quick summary of what I just covered about diegetic interfaces. They can help readers take a character's role, especially when they can feel, impact, and express emotions like they did in Shiva's Rangoli. The diegetic body can help readers feel actions viscerally and add responsibilities and stakes because it's their own body in the story world. And then integrating sensory affective properties of the interface can make experiences more visceral. So that's about it. And thank you all so much for listening to me. And I can stop sharing and I can pull it back if we want to. If there are any questions. But yeah, I'm open to questions, discussions.
Yeah, it was really a very fun talk. Loved it.
Thank you.
Very well done. Uh, so, any questions? Anybody? You can unmute yourself and ask the questions, or you can write the questions in the chat box.
So Aritra, I do have a question, but I was just wondering if anybody else wants to go first.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Mm. Okay, we have a question. So it's from Hiranand Mukherjee. He says, I think pertaining to the Gummy's Way Out project, there are many ways these diegetic experiences can be employed in healthcare. Like we have fitness trackers nowadays. Could you talk about this a bit?
Mhm. Yeah, so I think especially when it comes to food and storytelling, there are like so many areas where this can be applied, and definitely fitness and healthcare is one of them. You can think, especially when it comes to fitness trackers, because it's tracking your data on how you move. You can think about how this data can be integrated into the story world, maybe based on how much you move, the story sort of changes or manipulates if you don't meet your goals versus if you do meet your goals. And I think with food and interactive narratives, there are also many other areas to explore as well. Some of them can be educational, which Gummy's Way Out was a little bit, but some of them can just be about, eating foods from magical worlds, magical lands, like maybe Harry Potter. You're trying to try different chocolate frogs and seeing what's happening in the story. So it's also a good way of engaging people in story worlds. And when it comes to food and healthcare, I think we've also seen some works in virtual reality as well, where what they've started doing is, so let's say there's a plain biscuit that you're eating, but in virtual reality you see a layer of chocolate on it, and you can also smell chocolate. So that really changes the taste of it, and what it does, it makes you feel like you're eating chocolate, but you're not actually eating chocolate. And that's again something that they're trying to apply in healthcare for people who cannot eat sugar or have certain dietary restrictions, what we can do with food and augment how it looks to augment how it tastes as well.
Thank you. If that answers your question, you don't know, or do you want to add or ask something else? You can unmute yourself and uh, talk about it. Hello.
Hello. Yeah. Am I audible?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it answers my question. Actually, I was thinking about these new games that are coming out after the whole concept was executed through Pokemon Go. There is a new Witcher game that came out, which you can see monsters in the real world through your phone, and
Mm-hmm.
you act as a hunter for these monsters. I guess there are elements of this usage of these diegetic aspects in incorporating RPG elements, or if you walk a certain distance, you get 5 experience points, and then you level up and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. That's interesting. I didn't know about that, but yeah, seeing how much like you move or walk and how that's integrated into the game world or story world could be an interesting concept for sure.
Right, that I had a comment on it. I was thinking about the diegetic aspect of it. And as soon as I'm thinking about diegetic and the digital and the normal blending together, I was thinking about VR, and specifically a very small component about VR is there is this option in Steam, for example, Steam VR, where the main menu is sort of given to you as a room. It's not a one-to-one scale of your room, but I saw many people doing these experiments of creating furniture within the VR room that actually appropriately equates with the real life room of their own room. And so I was thinking that I was very fascinated about that, and as to what pertains to that when VR, and obviously putting on VR, even if you don't have the exact furnitures in room, that's also money. It is very immersive, and even making it even with parallel to the real life world. It's I was thinking about that
Yeah.
also. Like,
Yeah, I think that's actually very interesting. So, I don't know, I don't remember the name of the experience, but there's this horror show experience where which is in VR, where you're sitting in VR and watching a horror movie on TV. But whenever something happens, like whenever there's a knock on the door in the show, the thing actually happens in the house that you're sitting in VR. So you can hear someone knock on your door as well in VR. And even though you know that it's VR, it feels horrifying because there's this reality that is imposed. Like whatever you're seeing on TV is also happening around you, and that's how diegetic elements transfer. And yeah, sorry, excuse me. With VR, I think it becomes really interesting because it's already so immersive, and when you start like integrating things from your own reality as well in it, then what happens? I think with VR, what people are doing now is they're trying to integrate physical objects as well. So like you're seeing something in VR, but you're also touching it in reality, so that adds another element of immersion to it.
yeah. So moving on to the next question from Zara. She says, really enjoyed the talk, Saumya. I was fascinated by the intersection of affect and care that you portrayed through your projects. I was wondering if you can talk a bit about this, about situating ethics of care in the kind of interactive narratives you have talked about. Excited to see more from you.
So, Zara, could you tell me a little more about what you mean by ethics of care?
Hi, Saumya. Really
Hi.
enjoyed the talk, as I said. Yes, I was inspired by one of the participants' response to Gummy's Way Out, where they said that they could begin to think about the way Gummy was being transformed, but also the experience was transformative for them, and that they were horrified by the idea that this is an entity that they're actually chewing and biting into. And I was wondering that this is really inspirational for projects which want to talk about care and community building through this kind of transformative narrative that you talked about. And I feel there's a lot of potential in your projects for the same. So I was wondering if you thought about it. more in depth or plan to do so in the future?
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about empathy building, which is something that we've talked about in these works as well. So I feel whenever there's an opportunity to role play, even in Shiva's Rangoli, it sort of connects to empathy, because what you're doing is you're sort of leaving your own identity behind and trying to see the world from a different character's perspective. Like, how does this person see the world? And I talked about a small example in the beginning where readers take the role of a refugee traveling in the back of a truck, and that again was more of empathy building. Like, one has to hold their breath just so that they're not caught. And again, it's they're trying to inculcate the feelings, or what somebody might be feeling when they are in this situation. Granted, it's not a one-on-one, but it's better than nothing, and it sort of helps develop empathy as well. And then there's this with Gummy Bear, what we call second person perspective, where you are not the one who's struggling, but you're watching someone struggle, and there's only little that you can do to help them, or you're trying your best to help them and things aren't working out as they should. And that as well can develop empathy and care and responsibility, because you're not putting yourself in the situation, but you're trying to help someone who's helpless in that situation. And I think with Gummy's Way Out, another element of empathy and care that was in it was one's own body, because what a person was eating was not only affecting Gummy, but also their own body. So what we were trying to do is, if we could see if people started caring about their own bodies as well, because they had to care for Gummy here. So that was another aspect of it, of how it can, just be layered upon and see what happens. Yeah, I hope that gives some insight into the question.
Totally. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Moving on to the next comment by Rico, who says, "What do you think about games like Beat Saber, which indirectly helps people stay physically fit because of the movement involved?"
Yeah, I think it's an interesting concept. If I'm trying to think about the diegetic elements, I don't know what exactly would be diegetic there. Maybe the way that you move is diegetic, because how you're moving in reality is somehow reflected in how you move in the virtual environment as well. Um, so I think those are, and VR sort of does that anyway with movement, I guess. But I think what would be more interesting to see, rather than a one-on-one, just physical mimicking, is what happens when I move in this environment, and how does that integrate into the story world. We did another third project as well on virtual reality and movement, where people took the role of a fairy tale character, and the actions and the way they moved actually helped them get into character. So I think these games are wonderful, but to add a narrative element to it, we really have to think about, like, okay, what does this movement mean for the story world? Not just that it's a one-to-one mapping and I'm hitting objects or something, but like, if I move this way, what does it say about my character, or what does it say about me as a person in the story?
Interesting. Rico, if you want to add to it.
I wondered if I could ask a question, Noritro, if Rico.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So, connecting to just what you just said, Saumya, I was wondering whether such kind of diegetic means actually add to the agency, the narrative agency, or do they take away from the agency? Because when the gummy bear kind of goes in the body, there are lots of bodily reactions that might not kind of allow the. So that's one thing. And there's also, I don't know if you know this, but there is the game called Metal Gear Solid, where there's a character called Psycho Mantis. And if you play it on a console like Xbox or PS2, it's a PS2 game, then Psycho Mantis can read your movements in the console, and it tells you exactly what you are doing and it thwarts your action. and freaks you out. So I was just wondering that impact for the agency, for agency. What do you think? What?
Yeah. So let me go back to that's a very interesting thing, actually. I didn't know about this, but let's go back to the first question about agency. So I think that's really interesting, and I feel that diegetic interfaces can give you as much agency, can give the reader as much agency as the designer designs for. So in Shiva's Rangoli, we gave people only the agency to change the emotions and mood of the story, and they couldn't really impact the plot in any way. So, like, if Shiva were angry or calm, the plot would sort of move in the same direction. I think so. That was for us. That was like choice, a narrative choice on what to do. But I also think when it comes to Gummy's Way Out, that's very interesting what you said that, these bodily reactions, we don't really have agency over them. And that's something that a few people also said that, I cannot really change the way Gummy is moving in my blood or in my bowels. But what we did was, besides eating, there were also some bodily actions that they could take. Like they could take deep breaths to calm their body down, and that really helped people feel agency that, oh, I know because deep breaths do calm my body down in reality, and this should help in the story as well. So I think it's really based on what kind of actions you design for as well. So, like, maybe eating food to make your white blood cells healthier is not something that people will feel they have agency over, but taking deep breaths to feel calm is something that people do feel agency over, even though the same thing's happening in the story, even though the actions impact the story world in the same way. So I think just being conscious of what actions you're designing for and how they come across. If you want to like limit agency, then you can do that as well. If you want to give people more agency, you can do that as well. Um, and Yeah, so the second one was about the game that you just told me. I think could you repeat that? I think I sort of just lost track a
You
little bit.
know, it was just this kind of character called Psychomantis, which reads your thoughts based
Read
on
your
the
thoughts.
inputs from the controller and effectively thwarts everything that you're doing. So,
Yeah.
if you were playing at the moment, then if I were Psychomantis, I would say, Saumya, don't lean on the left because I can see what you're doing, and it's kind of like freaky. Yeah. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's also very interesting when you're calling out the person's actions, and that is a diegetic element, which is, I guess, I wouldn't know how it affects agency when I play it, but yeah, I would imagine that players are like, oh, like it sort of, they're like, oh, I shouldn't do this, or oh, this thing is like. Predicting everything that I'm doing, and maybe they feel less agency, or maybe they're finding ways to get around that. So I think that's again an interesting design element on where diegesis is being used to actually take away some components of agency.
Yeah,
But as I said, I think it's how you design the action that matters.
to this I would like to add to it, and the thing that you said, that how digesis is controlled. So exactly in this example of this psychomantis fight, this ultimately can be overcome by changing the controller cord from the first player controller tab to the second player. When you change it, then psychomantis cannot read your actions anymore. So
Hmm.
this was exactly how. Then again, you come back to your own. You get your own agency, if I, and taking from Shovik sir's comment on by taking the example from Kojima Hideo Kojima's game, I would also like to talk about uh, his latest game, Death Stranding, and I mean he's mostly whenever he tries to simulate through the controller the whole bodily movement and interaction of the player, and tries to convey it, and controller itself plays a very important role in his games. So that has been taken to a very higher amount in Death Stranding. The game is totally based on movement,
Hmm.
as in just walking. But the walking isn't just pressing one button and walk. It's
Hmm.
about maintaining maintaining balance, about maintaining the weight on all your shoulders and legs and hands. And
Mhm.
so the way, and you also become very, even when you are in a flow state with the game, you never seem to, the controller never seems to blend away into the background. The controller is
I see.
always present, and the controller feels like a very integral part of it, because the controller
Mhm.
shoulder buttons are actually connected to the main character's shoulder movements, and also the
Mhm.
controllers the trigger buttons are connected to his hands and the way he moves and balances. In fact, where the other in other interactive or digital mediums, camera isn't connected to the character more so as to, unless obviously it's a different kind of a perspective game. Generally, from a third
Mhm.
person perspective, camera movement only affects what you view, not seldom affects what the character is happening having it affecting the character. But in Death Stranding, if you move the camera very swiftly, the character kind of rumbles, and character thinks that, oh my goodness, where am I going to go, and then stops dead in the track. So these are the diegetic elements which, and also at, this is actually interesting because all of this simulation helps the player bond with the character in such a way
Mhm.
that, as you said, that creates a empathy for the character.
Mhm.
You can
Right.
see the fragility of the character, and that is what I was thinking, that how diegetic elements also help in as you said, that connecting with the character also makes you sort of understand the vulnerability of the character,
Mhm.
and makes you more, might make you more empathetic towards the
Right,
character.
right, definitely. Yeah, I think those are really good mechanics that are integrated on how the character moves based on the buttons that you press. I'm not sure if this strictly falls in diegetic or not, but nonetheless, I think the mechanics are really interesting. And why I say that is because diegetic is something that's not just a representation of what's happening, but it's actually the thing that is happening. So if let's say rather than pressing buttons, if maybe it was something about how I move my shoulders and that's being reflected back in the character, I think that would be more diegetic. But that being said, I think that's just a technicality. I really do think what you said about how you control the character, they've made the interface a little more difficult to control in a way, just so that you can empathize and recognize the character's vulnerability. So I think that's an interesting concept in itself. And it would be interesting to see how it could be made more diegetic, or how we could think about making it more diegetic.
Thank you. Anybody else wants to comment or ask any question? You can also write, or you
If
can.
nobody is kind of going for it, I have one more question. But one
Yeah,
more.
yeah, sure.
But let's see if anybody else is. So
I mean, you can ask the question in the meantime. People
yeah,
can
well, I mean,
write for it.
I'm just wondering what the kind of impact will be if you make a really scary game with something like this, because this is a long time ago when I was in Nottingham. We were making a game with kind of biosensors and things like that of a Call of Cthulhu. So basically, we had kind of like electrodes and stuff plugged into the player, and we'd get the players, kind of neural state, and then make the game scarier. So it was pretty
Okay.
sadistic as an, But I mean, I'm not, I'm not kind of talking about this here. But yours is a very different kind of thing, but there's similarity there as well. How do you? I mean, do you ever think of this? Like, it can be quite
Yeah.
dangerous, really, for people if you.
Yes, definitely. I think the genre really matters. And as I was describing that VR game as well, where you're watching a horror movie, but you also like experience the house around you turn into a horror house as well. And I think it can become really scary. Even within these projects, like in Gummy's Way Out, there were times when people felt a little horrified by thinking about, you know, a broken gummy traveling in your body, or someone's really sensitive to the sounds of blood and that really freaks them out. So the thing is, there are a lot of things that can really freak people out. And I think as designers, we should be really aware of that, give as many trigger warnings as we can,
Mhm.
really describe to people what's going to happen, so that we can prepare them and be like, if they're okay with it, and then only proceed. Because uh, where there's power to make things more immersive and like bring out emotions, I think it can go the other way as well. So if someone's looking for a horror experience and by all means they're okay with everything happening, I think it's okay then. But definitely as designers, we should be really considerate and try to like lay our cards on the table and tell people, okay, this is what's going to happen. Are you okay with it?
So where's the future of this of kind of such diegetic kind of like we know we are somewhere now in VR with Oculus
Yes.
Quest kind of going wireless and all of these, but
Yes.
where's the future of this? Where do you see this going?
So I think with strictly just tangible interactions, I think some places where this can go is museum interactions and interactive narratives. Maybe retelling of histories or retelling of different cultures, and then you actually make the person experience that history or culture. That could be one thing. And then we can also think of it in theme parks, or like if you've heard of the Harry Potter world in Universal Studios in LA. They do something similar where there are different objects with which you can interact with and do small magic tricks around the entire experience. But I think that could be made more complex by integrating these things where a person interacts with diegetic objects and then interacts with the story in that way as well. um, and then I think there are also like interactive theater experiences that are coming around as well, where a person would just move around the space and talk to the actors, and they're a part of this interactive theater world. And I think there as well there's opportunity for these diegetic objects to be used. Another area that's really upcoming is interactive food based storytelling. So, like dining experiences, narrative and dining experiences are upcoming as well. I think there also, if we use diegetic food elements like in Gummy, that could also become really interesting. But yeah, mainstream when it comes to interactive narratives, I think we are moving towards virtual reality. But even there, I feel there are opportunities to think about how to make things diegetic, and especially so because it blends into it turns our reality into something else. So we're no longer limited to menu screens or things that we see digitally. Like a lot of things can become diegetic because of the VR world. And I think whenever we integrate tangibles into VR worlds, I think that gives a really good opportunity to bring things from our reality into the VR world. And I think that's where a lot of this work can be influential as well. Um, Not just objects, but imagine even wearables like wearing some like we made this belt here which we weren't able to use, but wearing something and then feeling those things happen in VR, like pressure or heat or vibrations based on what's happening in the VR story world, could also be interesting.
That's absolutely fascinating, Samya. And I'm just wondering, I hope some people here in India, especially the museums, listen to what you're saying. I can just imagine the stupa at Sanchi or stupa in the Indian Museum in Calcutta, kind of just responding to those kind of like touch and stories coming alive.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's fascinating, and there's a lot of scope. Are you planning to work with any Indian organization at all? or
Um,
uh,
so not yet. Actually, so last 2 years, my work also got very limited to lab and just virtual stuff because of COVID. But the plan was to take this work outside and uh, talk to museums or dining experiences here to figure out where this work could go. But no, I'm not in conversation with anyone about this right now. But yeah, that would be very interesting to like see if this could play out in museums in India as well.
um,
So
any more questions?
yeah,
Hi Saumya, this is Poolam. I don't have a question. I'm just sitting here in awe of your presentation. This presentation
Thank you.
really, it was so fascinating. I mean, so I think this is one of our. I'm not sure if we had a similar presentation. If we have had a similar presentation before, which dealt with diegesis and the involvement of the body as much. So this was really, really amazing for the lot of us, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. No, thank you for inviting me. This was really nice to discuss these things with all of you and get a fresh perspective on it.
Trust me, we all got a lot of fresh perspective too.
Absolutely, and I do know Teresa Tannenbaum, with whom you work.
Ah,
Yeah, so that's how I kind of connected with you, because I've met her a couple of times at conferences. But
mhm.
I had one last question, which I can't kind of help but ask, which
Sure.
is, we haven't asked about the elephant in the room, which is the technical part of this. How does this work? Because there is a programmer in you, right? We are talking about culture and kind of affect and etc.
Mhm.
etc. But how do you make this work? I mean, how does the tactile part of it link to the digital kind of
Yeah.
yeah?
So I've done most of my work through a Makey Makey, and if you search that on Google, it's such a simple interface. Like they use it for kids in elementary school to teach them about coding concepts. But basically, what a Makey Makey does is it finishes a circuit. So let's you can connect any conductive material to it, and when your body touches that conductive material, it sort of finishes the circuit. And that's what we did with Shiva's Rangoli. So we use some small switches, and as soon as someone puts a ring down, a switch is pressed and that finishes the circuit on a Makey Makey. So what does this mean? The Makey Makey is connected to a laptop, and once a circuit is finished, it emulates a key press on the laptop. So when a circuit gets completed, it might mean that I'm pressing K on the laptop or G on the laptop. Once you have that, I think it gets really easy to code because now it's just a key press on the laptop. And then I would just use Python scripts to say like, oh, G is pressed, so turn on these lights, or F is pressed, so turn on this music. So then it's basically using a makey makey, making sure your circuit gets completed through this tangible interaction, and then uh, whatever you want to do with the key press on the laptop, you can do that. Then there are also these components of like lights or vibration motors. Then I've used Arduino, where that basically connects these hardware materials to your laptop. So anywhere where you see external hardware like that, that's connected to an Arduino. So the Arduino, the Makey Makey, and the Python scripts together make up all this work. I think Gummy's way out was really interesting because what we did was we used spoons. So whenever the user's body would touch the spoon, like whenever it would touch their lips, the circuit would complete because our bodies are conductive as well, and that would emulate a key press.
That is absolutely mind blowing. I've seen many things in this world, in the world of gaming, but absolutely, seriously,
So
I've
it's called Makey Makey. I just put it on the chat here. But
I've googled it already. I've found it, but it's also so it sounds so hilariously simple actually, but it's
Yeah.
so basically looking at the market side of it. If you ever get this out there, it'll be quite cheap, really. To Because if you're looking at the interface of the Arduino and the Makey and the uh, it's pretty much kind of well within people's pockets, really.
Yes. And replicable. I think that's the thing that we wanted to do with this work, was not get stuck up on the technical, like making it really technically advanced, so to say. We just wanted to make it really simple and focus more on the experience. That's how we found these hacks with the Makey. And I would say the Makey is a really hacky solution to all of it, but I think it works well for these interfaces.
It's yeah, I certainly won't call it jugaad, but it's quite kind of, yeah, it's fantastic.
I was thinking about the interaction part of it, and I was thinking about customizing the sort of interaction based on accessibility. So, I mean, giving a very personal anecdote. So, for example, so the menus I screen. So I am left-handed, but the menus are all designed in a way that they are accessible very good well for the right-handed. So, so I was also thinking about in this perspective about the accessibility part of it. Uh, since these are very simple, and so about the, I mean, how does it entail into the making process, or is it, you know, you have to keep it in mind while making it as a additional component? I was thinking about it.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, especially with simple things like a Makey. You can just reconnect wires to do something else. So it's as simple as just unplugging and plugging something for a left-handed person versus a right-handed person. If that's
I'm not
something
just talking about left-handed, right-handed. I was thinking about various
accessibility.
methods of various people with different kind of abilities. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. Yeah, I think
so
even field of tangibles in general is like there's a huge accessibility component to it as well. So if you look at the field of TEI, tangible embodied interaction, and then try to look at accessibility papers, I think there's a lot going on there as well.
Yes, I remember we designed a Wiimote to kind of function as a walking stick for the visually challenged. But this was
Mhm.
way back in 2008, thereabouts. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if anybody else has questions, but I also wanted to ask you. Really, I'm super impressed by all this. So, I wanted to know how you how you managed to get into all of this. Where did it all start? I mean, how did you start thinking in this?
So I think when I came into this program, I wanted to just design, but and my thinking of design was really limited to what we know in the digital world and screens and apps and websites and things. But when I came here, I think it was mostly my advisor's work,
Yes.
Teresa's work, where I saw her designing not just very far from the digital world actually. Most of her work was on tangibles and the physical world and how to tell stories through them. And it started with the example that I talked about, genie bottles. So I think I just took one of her classes and I was reading about tangibles, and this thing came up on genie bottles, and it really intrigued me. Like it's such a simple design where you like rub a bottle and then you hear a genie come out and tell their story, but something's really stuck to me and intrigued me, and I was trying to figure out what it was. And I think that's how I came across the concept of diegetic elements. And I also looked at my advisor's work a little more, and that's where it all started from. I did some smaller projects, and then I was like, okay, I think I want to build a storytelling system, and let's see what happens. So I did that. I That's how Shiva's Rangoli started becoming, a part of the thing. And once I created Shiva's Rangoli, I think I got more confidence in this field. So I was like, okay, now I can create more interactive narratives and see where it goes.
Thank you. That's like absolutely fascinating. So over to Orithro. And
Yeah. So, any more questions? I guess no more. We are also bit out of time. I guess no. Anybody making
I
any
think we
points?
are
Or
more
we
in
can.
awe than out of time. Really, this is quite
Yeah,
overwhelming.
exactly.
Yeah.
No, I mean, exactly. I mean, we want more sort of conversation. This
Yeah,
conversation
Saumya,
going.
do you have any links for the projects that you have done? The
Um,
Shiva's Rangoli and the Gummy
Yeah,
bear one. Could you
we
please
can
post
share
it?
it in
And
the
you can post it in the
chat.
WhatsApp group also that you're also a part of.
yeah, sure. I think
Yeah,
like if you just search for my Google Scholar profile as well, just
Okay.
Saumya Gupta UCI, you'll see a few of those papers. But let me just link you to my website for the time being,
Oh,
uh, which yeah, there we go. But yeah, I think the Google Scholar profile obviously gives a much better uh, synthesis of this work than the website. But yeah,
thank you so much, Saumya. Yes, we'll check
no
it out.
problem.
nice.
Thanks a lot, Samya. So I hope that you stay in
Any
touch
more
with us
comments? Any
and
more
with
questions?
India.
Definitely, definitely. I'm really glad to have done this talk and like been introduced to you all, and it's been so nice discussing this work with you. But I'd love to stay in touch. As Poonam said, I'm on the WhatsApp group. I'm on the Facebook page as well. So and
Yay!
I'd love to come back and just listen to you all talk as well.
And we would like to have you back again to present on your newer projects or on the Gummy Bears project when it reaches fruition, when it is published. So
Yeah.
we would definitely want to know what happens to Gummy finally, where
Definitely, definitely. But thank you so much for inviting me here today.
Thank you so much for accepting the invitation
Thank
and
you.
doing this.
No problem.
Thank you so much. It was amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess no more comments and questions. So we are concluding, I guess. I mean, love the talk. That was really a fantastic session. Thanks again.
Thank you.
And also another, obviously, now another reminder that we aren't Game Studies India anymore. We are Digra India, India's very own Digra chapter. And this was our very first talk under the banner of Digra India. And really love the talk. So I guess we are coming to an end of this episode.
just to make an announcement, or we have an adda on trolling, which you and Rico
Yeah,
are leading tomorrow. But well, I'm sure people have already signed up for it. So this is part of
exactly.
our double bill for India's Independence Day, and well, so
And also Digra India's
big Digra
inaugural
India's yes, true.
retreat. So yeah, so we have an adda on trolls and toxicity, fundamentals of gaming, coming up soon, as part, as Shovik just said, as part of our inauguratory and also the in lieu of India's Independence Day uh, celebrations, maybe. So, with this today, we have come to a conclusion of today's event. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.